Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer, and this is Movie Talk. Obi-Wan and Anakin are back, protecting the galaxy along with the other Jedi Knights in the follow-up to the Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. This movie takes place 10 years after the events of Attack of the Clones. So, Phantom Menace, excuse me. So, where we see in a Phantom Menace, Anakin is a 9-year-old boy. Now, he's a 19-year-old young man. The premises of this movie is that there is disorder within the galaxy that has caused a rift. And several fractions of the Galactic Republic have split, forming the Separatists, and I can't exactly remember what they call themselves, though it is mentioned in the movie and later on in the Clone Wars TV show. Now, Anakin, who is now played by Hayden Christensen, I believe is how you say his name, returns to Coruscant with Obi-Wan and is reunited with Padme after a 10-year separation. Padme is no longer a queen in this movie; she is now a senator, as she was elected queen 10 years ago in the Phantom Menace, and it's kind of like being president of the United States. You're not it from start to you hold a term of office. But an assassination attempt is made on her life, and Anakin and Obi-Wan are assigned to protect her. Following up a tip, Obi-Wan sends Anakin and Padme along with R2-D2 to Naboo, where Padme will be safe, while he goes to see an old friend of his, which points him in the direction of the cloners of Kamino, where he finds that a clone army for the past 10 years was being developed for the Republic. He then finds his way to Geonosa, where he gets himself into a little bit of trouble, and Anakin and Padme have to come and help him, and then they get into some trouble, and then the rest of the Jedi Knights, or a good portion of the Jedi Knights, and the clones come and save them. And this basically sets up what is going to happen in the third movie of the prequels. Now, Ian McGregor, Natalie Portman, Samuel L. Jackson, Ian McDermott, Anthony Daniels, and Kenny Baker, and Frank Oz all reprise their roles as Obi-Wan Kenobi, Padme Amidala, Mace Windu, Chancellor Palpatine / Darth Sidious, C-3PO, R2-D2, and Yoda in this movie. We actually see a little more of Mace Windu and Yoda in this movie, as we are not jumping, as we spend a little more time on Coruscant, and we do see more of the Jedi Knights. We also see Plo Koon in this movie, though he doesn't have any lines. Kit Fisto, Shakti, Ayla Secura, and Adi Gil, I believe is how you say his name, though they don't really have any lines, but we do see them on Geonosa fighting. And I think we also see a very young Ahsoka, although I could be mistaken. I will get to her in when we start talking about the Clone Wars movie, for those of you who don't know who she is. We're also introduced to Jango Fett, although he's only exclusively in this movie, but he is mentioned in the Clone Wars TV show, and he's the one that the clones are all made from. And we're introduced to a very young Boba Fett, who's 10 years old, and they are played by Tima Morrison and Danny Logan, respectively. And I thought they did a very good job matching them up, as Danny Logan almost looks like he would be the son of Samuel Morrison. There is a very strong resemblance, so I thought they did a very good job of matching them up as father and son. We also are introduced to Count Dooku / Darth Tyrannus, I believe is how you say his Sith name. I didn't know he had a Sith name. And he's played by Christopher Lee. And we are also introduced to Critic Lars, who we only see exclusively in this movie, and a very young Owen Lars and Beru Winston. And they are played by Jack Thompson, Joel Egerton, and Bonnie Price, I believe is how you say her last name, respectively. And this is when Anakin and Padme go back to Tatooine because Anakin had a nightmare about his mother being in trouble. And we meet them. Clede had bought Padme from Watto, who owned, or not Padme, had bought Smee from Watto, who owned her and Anakin in the previous movie. And he set her free and then married her. And Owen is Clede's son from a previous marriage, and Beru is Owen's girlfriend. They don't actually say her last name. I just kind of found it in Wikipedia when I was looking up the actors who played this. Overall, I liked this movie a lot better than I liked Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith. I felt that this, well, it does refer back to the Phantom Menace a little bit. Just, you kind of want to watch the Phantom Menace just to kind of see where certain connections were made. This is sort of a standalone movie. You don't need to watch the Phantom, you can kind of figure out what's going on without watching the Phantom Menace to follow this. And it leads up to events of Revenge of the Sith, but it can stand alone. I think that's kind of why I liked it, where with the Phantom Menace, you kind of like, okay, we kind of know where these characters are going from here. Anakin's going to become a Jedi, or trained to be a Jedi. In this movie, he's actually still a Padawan. Whatnot. And in Revenge of the Sith, you kind of know how that movie's going to end too, but I will talk more about that when we get to Revenge of the Sith. But this movie was actually very interesting, as the Clone Wars is really only mentioned once in the original trilogy, and that's at the beginning when Luke and Obi-Wan are talking. And after that, it's not really well, actually twice is Leia mentions it. Both times are in A New Hope. But it's not really mentioned much after that. The clones aren't really mentioned after that. We really don't see any of the clones, though there are some theories floating around that Rex was in Return of the Jedi, one of the rebel soldiers in Return of the Jedi. You know, it's hard to, I don't know, it's very possible. Some people say there, after he came back in Rebels, that there was a soldier in Revenge of the Jedi that looked remarkably like his animated character. You know, that could be a coincidence, there could be something there, who knows. And we also get to see the clones in this movie, obviously, as it's called Attack of the Clones, which I found really interesting. We don't really see Cody in this movie. I don't think I'm pretty sure Cody was made in this movie at this point in the timeline, like the character at this point in the timeline. We just don't see him, as I think he's still in training. We do see Rex, though. And what makes me think that Cody was not part of the group that attacked, that went to Geonosis to save Obi-Wan, Padme, and Anakin is something that's mentioned when they go back to retake Geonosis in the TV show, where Obi-Wan's talking about what happened last time. And I think if Cody had been there, he wouldn't have to talk about last time because he would know. I believe Rex is in there, though. I think Rex is actually one of the clones in there. I could be mistaken. I don't know because the clones aren't given names in this particular movie. But again, really interesting. I liked going back to Naboo. I really liked Naboo. This very beautiful planet. I found Kamino actually very interesting, as the entire time we're there, it's just raining. It's like a torrential downpour, and there's like no land anywhere. It's just water and rain, and then the buildings are built up on these stilts over the water, which I thought was interesting. And Geonosis was okay. I wasn't a big fan of Geonosis or the Geonosians, but that's just because I don't like bugs. And the Geonosians are basically, they were modeled after termites, so I was just not, that was just the reason why I wasn't a big fan of the Geonosians. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were the quintessential bad guys of the movie, or one of the bad guys of the movie. I don't like bugs. They could have been with the Republic, and I wouldn't have liked the Geonosians just because they're bugs. I do not like bugs. Bugs creep me out, except for like butterflies and ladybird beetles, or ladybugs, as they're more commonly called, and praying mantises. Those are like the only bugs that don't freak me out. And these were designed after termites, which just, I just do not like termites. Termites just give me the creeps, more than like any other kind of bug. But that's just me. That's just my thing. I liked the interaction between Anakin and Padme in this movie. You see a lot of flirtation between the two of them in this movie, and I like that, how they had this big sci-fi fantasy movie going on, where they had to protect the galaxy and save the world and everything, or save the galaxy and whatnot, like a typical sci-fi movie, like Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Trek or something, and like any other Star Wars movie. But they did put this little love story kind of in the middle of it, and I liked how it wasn't distracting. Sometimes when you're doing this big epic movie that's supposed to be about like fighting and saving the day and whatnot, and you think, well, we have to temper this down, and drop a love story in there. Sometimes the love story can be a little distracting, and this one wasn't. So I did like that. Like I said, this, out of the prequels, this one was probably my favorite, as it answers a lot of questions you have about the Clone Wars, as they don't get into from the original trilogy, as in the original trilogy they don't get into too much depth on the Clone Wars. It's mentioned twice and they just leave it at that. They don't get into it, and I for one felt that you need to explain that a little more, because Obi-Wan, when Leia's talking about it in her message to him, obviously he lived it, so he kind of knows what it is. Luke may have learned about it from, his aunt or uncle or school, depending on, whether or not he went to school on Tatooine or he was homeschooled. But we as the viewers, unless we see these prequels before we see the original trilogy, we don't really know what the Clone Wars are. So I felt they needed to elaborate on that a little more in the trilogy and in the original trilogy, and they didn't. So that's why I kind of like this movie, because it does elaborate. We don't see all of it, but it does set it up, and you kind of get the idea of what the Clone Wars was. We actually see the beginning of the Clone Wars in this. So I did like that. Like I said, Phantom Menace was okay. It was a good setup. I thought it moved a little slow in some places, and then moved a little fast in other places. But it was okay. Revenge of the Sith kind of fell flat by my expectations. I think mostly because I kind of knew what was going to happen by the end of the movie without having to, the first time I sat down to watch it. So I think that's kind of why, because I'd seen the original trilogy first. But yeah, this one was definitely my favorite of the prequels. And for those of you who haven't seen my video on Phantom Menace, it's Star Wars Day Special Edition, so check that out. Also, feel free to check out my other movie talk videos, and also my TV talk videos and my book talk videos. And I have some Star Wars lists, 4 Star Wars lists that I have posted. Top 20 favorite Star Wars characters, top 5 favorite Star Wars couples, top 10 favorite clones, and top 10 favorite Jedi. So feel free to check those out. Please like and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. I'm up to 3 subscribers now. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I will have the information in the description section. And I will see you next time. I'm Jennifer. Thank you for joining me for this movie talk, and have a very nice day, and may the Force be with you.